The philosophy of do more, show less wasn't born in silence. It was born in the pain of realizing that the more you talk, the less you accomplish, and the more you seek validation, the more you lose yourself. So before we begin, subscribe to the channel now, because what you're about to hear can change the way you live, work, and build your identity. This journey will tear apart your need for approval, expose the ego that sabotages you, and show you why the Stoics built empires in silence while the rest of the world talked too much. There's a kind of peace that only emerges when you stop explaining your plans to people who don't understand your vision. It's a heavy, almost sacred silence, like the breath before the first step of a long journey. Have you ever felt it? That sensation of being on the verge of creating something big without saying a single word. Marcus Aurelius spoke about this, the power of acting without asking for permission, of building without announcing, of growing without noise. Because when you stay quiet, your focus sharpens. When you withdraw, your strength multiplies. But no one tells you how hard it is to become someone who chooses the internal path over external recognition. The world trains you to show, display, prove, post, but real greatness is formed in the dark, where no one applauds you, no one watches you, no one gives you likes. And that's precisely why it becomes unshakable. The philosophy of productive silence isn't just about not talking. It's about not needing to talk. It's about becoming so competent that reality makes the noise for you. Think of every time you destroyed your own energy by sharing your plans with people too small to understand them. Think of every project that died after being shown too early. Think of how your motivation evaporates when you open your soul expecting support and receive judgment instead. This is where modern Stoicism comes in. It teaches you to protect your creative flame, shield your mind, and turn your execution into your best argument. Silence becomes your shield, action becomes your sword. If this message has already started stirring something inside you, comment a single word that describes what you're feeling. Because from here on, each section will go deeper into something you need to hear, even if it hurts a little. The truth is that talking gives you a false sense of progress. You announce your dreams, and for a few seconds it feels like you're moving forward, but you're not. You're only harvesting small doses of validation to replace the discipline you haven't practiced. The ego loves this trick. It convinces you that being seen is as important as doing, and that's how it paralyzes you. The philosophy of do more, show less is the antidote to this internal trap. It gives you back the strength to build without an audience. When you commit to silence, something shifts inside you. Your mind starts working for you, not against you. Your focus becomes sharper, your intention cleaner, your energy deeper. You realize that external validation doesn't sustain you for a day, but silent progress feeds you for a lifetime. You trade the noise of expectations for the quiet sound of real evolution, the kind you can feel but no one can see. Yet, and that yet is crucial, because the moment will come when you reveal yourself, not because you want to be seen, but because your work will be too complete to be ignored. The world cannot resist the impact of what was built in silence. There is a mystical force in the fruit of a labor that was not exposed during its gestation. It's the same principle as the seed. It grows in the dark, unseen, until it breaks through the soil with a strength no one imagined. But for that, you must accept creative solitude. You must understand that greatness is never born in noisy places. Silence is the laboratory where you become the kind of person who doesn't need to promise, because they deliver. The kind of person who doesn't need to appear because they are inevitable. The kind of person who becomes dangerous precisely because no one saw their construction happening, only the final result. And now that you're here, immersed in this atmosphere of introspection and inner power, remember something. This video is not just a script. It's an invitation to a new identity, a silent, strategic, indestructible identity. Subscribe, share, and send this to someone who needs to hear it, because from now on, everything you build will be deeper, stronger, and more yours than ever before. The modern world conditioned you to believe that visibility equals value, but it's this very constant exposure that drains your strength and compromises your internal construction. When you talk too much about what doesn't yet exist, you give the power of your process to people who don't carry the weight of your purpose. And little by little, without noticing, you begin building not for yourself, but for the audience. And that is the beginning of your silent downfall. Stoicism calls you back to the essential: act without performing, grow without announcing, evolve without asking for witnesses. There is a nearly violent serenity in working while no one knows what you're doing. It is the tranquility of knowing that nothing and no one can interfere with what is being born inside you. You don't need to explain your plans because they're not ready. You don't need to expose your progress because it's still taking shape. You don't need to justify your silence because silence is proof that you are actually doing. People mistake silence for weakness, but disciplined silence is the most refined form of strength. You've surely noticed that the people who talk the most about their goals are always the ones who evolve the least. Because confusing intention with action is a common disease of the undisciplined mind. Intention excites you, action transforms you, and while intention lives only in your head, action demands sacrifice. The sacrifice of who you are for who you want to become. That's why the Stoic never wastes energy displaying dreams. He uses it to build reality. There is an invisible weight in sharing your plans with people who don't share your ambition. Every comment, every opinion, every criticism, every doubt planted by those who don't understand your vision is like a small cut in your focus. It's as if every word spoken too early weakens your original conviction. And before you realize it, you no longer know whether you're building what you desire or simply trying to prove something to people who were never meant to matter. That's where the importance of protecting your inner world with everything you have is born. If this makes sense to you, comment a sentence about what's happening inside you as you hear this. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe now, because this is exactly the kind of truth the world doesn't want you to discover. The philosophy of do and don't tell doesn't demand social isolation. It demands mental hygiene, filtering who knows your steps, protecting what's still being formed, and preventing external noise from interfering with what is aligning inside you. Because before any victory exists in the material world, it must exist in your mind, and your mind only flourishes when it's not being invaded by other people's voices. When you commit to building in silence, you learn something no one teaches. Silence is not empty. It is full of intention, full of focus, full of decisions no one sees, but that shape your destiny. Silence is the environment where your convictions grow and your doubts die. Silence is the place where you can finally hear yourself, without interference, without noise, without distraction. And in that silence, you begin to see what truly matters. It's not about proving anything, nor about impressing anyone. It's about becoming someone who keeps promises to themselves. Because when you become someone who doesn't need to speak to validate your path, the whole world starts noticing, not for what you say, but for what you become. True authority doesn't need announcements. It only needs consistency. Little by little, you notice that life has trained you to be loud, visible, noticeable, but the greatness you admire in others was born in the opposite extreme. It is in withdrawal that you develop depth, in silent discipline that you develop mastery, in productive solitude that you build inner power. People misunderstand this because they confuse absence with weakness, but absence is strategy. You don't disappear because you're lost. You disappear because you're evolving. And when the moment finally comes for you to show up, because that moment always comes, The impact will be so strong, so clear, so undeniable that people will believe you came out of nowhere. But you will know the truth. You didn't come out of nowhere. You came out of silence, out of your silence. From that sacred place where you traded the need for approval, for the need to become someone who doesn't need explaining. There are moments in life when you realize it's not the world holding you back. It's you, wasting energy trying to be seen before you're ready. You rush, talk too much, share everything, seek approval, and then wonder why your results feel weak, fragmented, without impact. Stoicism gives you a hard truth. You drain yourself trying to impress when you should be strengthening yourself trying to evolve. The philosophy of silence gives you back your lost depth. It reminds you that the rush to show kills the depth of building. The truth is that there's an almost invisible power in the person who appears less than they produce. They don't need to justify, explain, narrate every step, because their identity is in the delivery, not in the explanation. And when you begin to operate like this, something inside you changes. Your posture changes, your energy changes, your presence changes. You start walking through the world with a serenity that few understand, but everyone feels. It's not arrogance, it's inner mastery. It's someone who no longer depends on the external gaze to exist. The problem is that showing too much creates expectations. Expectations create pressure. Pressure creates anxiety. Anxiety destroys focus. It's a silent cycle that eats your strength without you noticing. When you share every step of your process, you begin feeling like you owe something to the world, as if you had signed a contract with people who never should have had access to your creative intimacy. That's why the Stoics defend silence as discipline. It's a way to preserve energy, protect vision, and maintain autonomy. There's also a type of peace that emerges only when you become someone impermeable to the judgment of others. This lightness is born when you quiet down, when you close your doors, when you decide that your evolution is no longer going to be a public performance. At that moment, all your attention shifts back to what truly matters: execution, refinement, the process. And everything that once felt confusing suddenly begins to make sense. Because truth only appears when noise disappears. If these words are doing something inside you, comment "inner power" now and subscribe, because the next sections will go even deeper into this silent transition you're living. The philosophy of do more, show less is not motivational advice. It's a war strategy, a war against your distractions, against your insecurities, against the childish need to be seen, against the ego that wants applause before it deserves it. By staying silent, you strike at the most vulnerable point of your mind, the compulsive need for validation. It's in this internal attack that true strength is born, not the strength of appearing strong, but the strength of being strong. And interestingly, when you stop talking about your goals, they begin to gain a nearly spiritual clarity. You start visualizing more accurately, planning more precisely, executing more courageously, because now there is no audience to judge your hesitation. No external pressure, no outside opinion interfering with your path. There is only you, your journey, and the silence that protects your construction. And in this scenario, your best self begins to emerge. People will ask where you were, why you disappeared, what you've been doing. But you'll realize you owe no explanations. Those truly working don't have time to narrate their own journey, and those who need to know already know. The Stoics always understood this. The value of something is not in what you say about it, but in what it becomes when cultivated far from the eyes of the world. You will also notice something curious. The more you stay quiet, the more you observe. And the more you observe, the more you understand. People reveal everything when they talk too much, and nothing when they observe too little. You'll begin to perceive patterns, intentions, vulnerabilities, energy. You'll learn who truly roots for you and who simply wants access to your growth. You'll understand which conversations feed your mind and which ones drain your soul. Silence gives you vision. And when the moment finally arrives to reveal yourself, because every silent process has its point of explosion, the impact will be inevitable. Not because you sought attention, but because you became impossible to ignore. The world respects those who appear ready, who built with depth, who chose solidity over spectacle, who understood that true greatness is forged far from the lights, only to illuminate everything afterward. There is a truth few admit. You lose power every time you react to what doesn't deserve your energy. When someone provokes you, when chaos tries to pull you in, when someone else's opinion tries to control you, you give away parts of your strength to situations that change nothing in your life. This is why the Stoics mastered the art of choosing their battles, not because they were cold, but because they knew life is too short to waste focus on what doesn't build anything. Wisdom is knowing when to fight and when to simply keep walking. Imagine two people walking down the same street. One responds to every noise, every distraction, every interruption, every irrelevant challenge. They stop, get irritated, argue, explain, try to prove, try to correct. The other keeps walking, firm, centered, unshaken, with the calm of someone who doesn't confuse movement with progress. The first gets exhausted, the second evolves. That's how life works. Your results don't depend on how much you react, but on how wisely you preserve your energy for what truly matters. When you understand this, something inside you shifts. You stop entering small wars, empty conversations, conflicts that aren't yours. You realize most battles you fight aren't yours. They're your ego's. They're attempts to prove you're right, capable, worthy, visible. But the person who remains at peace while the world tries to provoke chaos around them carries a strength that intimidates, because nothing shakes someone who knows exactly where to place their attention. The challenge is resisting the immediate impulse. The mind wants to respond, wants to show, wants to argue, wants to defend. But the Stoic path invites you to do the opposite. Breathe, observe, analyze, and only then decide whether the situation deserves your energy. In 9 out of 10 situations, it doesn't. The cost is higher than the benefit, and every time you choose not to react, you reclaim a piece of your internal power, the power you used to waste without noticing. If this makes sense to you, comment Inner Power now and subscribe, because the next sections will go even deeper into this silent transition you're living. The truth is, no one taught you that emotional maturity is the ability to not get involved in everything. You don't need to correct everything. You don't need to answer everything. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to justify yourself. Most things resolve themselves when you stop feeding the fire. The world works like this. Everything you ignore loses power. Everything you feed grows. Choose wisely what you want to grow, and this doesn't mean being passive. It means being strategic. It means choosing to fight when something real is at stake. Your integrity, your values, your future, your courage, your boundaries. The Stoics never taught you to be a spectator of your own life. They taught you to be surgical, economical, precise. To save your energy for the battles that move your story forward, not for the ones that only drain your soul. Little by little, you begin noticing that most things that used to irritate you now seem too small to justify your reaction. Offenses, indirect comments, judgments, comparisons, everything loses strength in front of someone who has found a strong internal axis. It's as if your mind has become a silent fortress, and every external noise hits the wall and falls to the ground without impact. That is psychological freedom. That is self-mastery. The most curious part is this. When you stop reacting to the world changes the way it reacts to you. People begin respecting you more. Your presence becomes heavier. Your voice carries more weight. You become someone who doesn't enter empty discussions, who doesn't follow unnecessary conflicts, who doesn't give away their balance for trivial provocations. People feel this and step back, because the silence of someone strong is more intimidating than the scream of someone weak. And when you finally choose to fight, because there will be moments when fighting is unavoidable, You fight with precision, with clarity, with purpose, with efficiency. Because you saved energy, time, and focus for what truly matters. That's how you win great battles. Not by entering all of them, but by entering only the right ones. And when you win the right ones, your entire life changes. There is a silent pain that accompanies every process of growth, the pain of letting go of what no longer fits the person you are becoming. Letting go is not easy. It never was. But holding on to what weighs more than it pushes you forward is choosing to stay small. Stoicism teaches that holding on to what has already completed its cycle is a form of spiritual sabotage. You don't grow by accumulating. You grow by releasing what blocks movement. And that release, as deep as it is, requires courage. The courage to open your hand even when your heart trembles. The truth is, you hold on to many things out of fear, not necessity. You hold on to people who have already left emotionally. You hold on to habits that drain your strength. You hold on to old stories that exist only inside your mind. You hold on to guilt that is no longer yours. You hold on to past versions of yourself that should have been buried with honor. And why? Because the ego prefers familiar prisons over unknown freedom. But the unknown is fertile ground. The unknown is where the new begins. The unknown is where you are reborn. Letting go is a spiritual act. It is admitting that life doesn't owe you eternal stability. It is allowing everything that no longer makes sense to continue its path. It is accepting that you don't control what stays, only what you choose to keep. When you understand this, you realize that strength is not in holding on, but in releasing. Not in gripping, but in trusting. Not in preserving the old, but in creating space for what's trying to arrive. But there is something deeper. Many times, you don't move forward because you're emotionally tied to what should have been, not to what could be. You attach yourself to idealized versions of relationships, dreams, expectations, identities. You live inside ghosts of the past, and these ghosts steal your presence. They freeze your evolution. They keep your soul tied to a time that no longer exists. The Stoic path invites you to bury these ghosts with respect, but bury them for real. If this makes sense, comment "I release" and subscribe, because the rest of this script will take you to an even deeper level of awareness. The process of letting go is brutal because it dismantles illusions you nurtured for years. You discover that many of the things you held weren't as big as they seemed. You discover that the stability you feared losing was never stability. It was stagnation. You discover that the person you thought you needed hasn't walked beside you for a long time. You discover that your growth needs space, and space only appears when you remove what's excessive. Did it hurt to discover this? Yes, but it hurt even more to keep what suffocated your full breath. And it's in that pain that something rare emerges. Clarity. The clarity to see that everything you release allows you to grow, and this clarity transforms you. You begin observing your life with the precision of an artisan sculpting their destiny. You ask yourself, does this still serve me? Does this still strengthen me? Does this still represent me? And when the answer is no, you let go. Not because there wasn't love, but because there is responsibility toward who you're becoming. The world wants to convince you that letting go is failure. But failure is insisting on what no longer has life. Letting go is maturity. Letting go is self-knowledge. Letting go is emotional discipline. Letting go is a higher form of self-love. The Stoics knew this. Every time you hold on to what should be released, you suffocate your own evolution. But every time you let go, you create space for something greater, more aligned, more authentic. That's how the future begins entering. And when you release the old, something curious happens. Your mind expands. Your body breathes better. Your energy starts flowing again. Your intuition becomes sharper. You begin feeling like you're returning to yourself, as if a part of you that was asleep has finally awakened. It's not that life became lighter. you became stronger. And this strength creates an inner field so powerful that everything no longer compatible naturally dissolves. In the end, letting go is an act of faith, not faith in the world, but faith in yourself. It's accepting that you deserve to grow without carrying weights that are no longer yours. It's trusting that the empty space will be filled with something better. It's allowing the flow of life to take you to the next chapter without trying to control every page. And when you finally do this, you realize you never lost anything. You only regained space for the new to enter. Your mind is a sacred place, but you treat it as if it were an open train station where anyone can enter, leave noise, spread chaos, and walk out without responsibility. You open your doors to opinions that weaken you, worries that don't belong to you, dramas that aren't yours, expectations you never asked for. That's why you feel exhausted. It's not your body that's tired. It's your mind that's overloaded. Stoicism reminds you of something simple and powerful. You are the guardian of your internal home. Imagine your mind as a large white room, clean, quiet, illuminated, where your best ideas are born. Now imagine that, without realizing it, you've let strangers enter with dirty boots, dropping mud, making a mess, speaking loudly, turning off your light. That's what happens every time you let the world invade your head without filters. You lose clarity, you lose focus, you lose peace. And what grows in such an environment? Nothing useful, nothing that advances, nothing that blooms. You must learn to close the door, not aggressively, but consciously. It's not selfishness. It's mental hygiene. Every time you expose yourself to toxic conversations, empty criticism, pointless comparisons, endless notifications, other people's dramas, you pay a price. And the price is enormous. It costs your peace. It costs your inner silence. It costs your creative energy. The Stoic does not reject the world. He simply decides how much of the world enters his mind, and that decision changes everything. The truth is, your mind has always been too open, open to noise, open to interference, open to distractions that steal your strength. But there's something far more important. Your mind is also open to being molded, transformed, rewritten. And you can turn this internal space into an unshakable territory, a fortress, a clean room, a temple. But that requires a daily choice. Who do I allow to enter here? If this is resonating inside you, comment, "My mind is my home," and subscribe, because the next sections will go even deeper into this process of internal strengthening. When you understand that your mind is a space that needs order, everything changes. You begin choosing more carefully what you consume, what you listen to, what you read, what you watch. You realize every thought planted becomes a fruit, and some fruits are poisonous. You realize the people you allow in influence your mood, your focus, your discipline, your vision for the future. The door should never have been automatic. It should have been manual and selective. Little by little, you feel the internal mess beginning to fade. The dust of unnecessary worries settles. Emotional noise decreases. The light returns. You feel like you're reclaiming a space that had been invaded by excess. This sensation is transformative. It feels like you are rediscovering a room inside yourself that you hadn't entered in years. A room of clarity, order, concentration, and depth. A place where you can finally think without interruption. And when your mind becomes organized, your outer life follows the same path. You begin acting with more precision, making decisions with more firmness, establishing boundaries with more confidence. Your energy no longer leaks. Your productivity rises naturally. Your creativity is reborn. You feel lighter, yet stronger. It's strange how the mind influences everything. When it aligns, everything else aligns with it. Over time, you'll realize that true peace is not in controlling the world, but in controlling access to your internal world. People will continue talking, judging, giving opinions, trying to enter, but you no longer open the door as easily. Now you evaluate. Now you filter. Now you choose. And that choice gives you a power few possess. the power to stay centered even amid external chaos. In the end, keeping the door to your mind open is living at the mercy of the world. Closing it wisely is living guided by yourself. This is what the Stoics learned, and this is what you are learning now. Your mind is your home, and only you can decide who enters. In the end, everything comes down to a silent choice. Will you continue living to be seen, or will you begin living to become someone who cannot be ignored? The philosophy of do more, show less is not just a method, it is an identity. An identity built in silence, strengthened in discipline, and revealed only when it is too mature to be questioned. The question now is simple yet powerful. What do you still need to let go of in order to finally become unshakable? And more importantly, which version of you is ready to be born when the noise stops? If this script touched something inside you, leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this message with someone who needs to remember their own strength. Your journey doesn't end here. It begins the moment you decide to act in silence and grow with intention.